Hey gang, Massad Ayoob here for Wilson Combat Channel. Be sure to subscribe and don't forget to press the little notification bell you'll see on the screen to get a notification of each subsequent episode of the show. We're hosted by my old friend Bill Wilson. Great to see him again. And both of us get a lot of questions from folks. I just bought my first gun. I got it for self-defense. What do I need to know? In recent months, literally millions of new people have entered the gun culture, if you will, by the purchase of their first firearm. What do they need to know? We'll address it from the trainer's perspective, and we'll address it particularly from their perspective, the shooter's perspective. Bill, what do you think a new shooter needs to be looking at first?
Well, number one is safety. You know, that's paramount above everything else, because the last thing in the world we want is a new shooter to injure themselves or, you know, heaven forbid, one of their loved ones or anyone else. You know, so there's two things important that you just can't not do. You know, I mean, you have to keep your finger off the trigger, and you can't point the gun at something you don't want to destroy. You know, just ingrain that into your mind. There's two things that are critical. Don't point the gun at anyone, and keep your finger off the trigger unless you want to make the gun go bang. If you do either one of those things, nobody's going to get injured. If you do both of them, now you've just set in redundancy. Absolutely no one's going to ever get injured. So always think of that. You know, don't point the gun at anything you don't want to destroy, and keep your finger off the trigger. You know, then that obviously falls into, if you have to shoot, then you need to be aware of what you're shooting, who you're shooting. Make sure, you know, it's something you want to destroy, and look beyond what you're shooting at. Make sure there's not someone, you know, just beyond them that you could get a shoot through, or you could, if you miss, you could shoot someone that's behind that person. So kind of, if you keep your finger off the trigger, don't point it at anything you don't want to destroy. Make sure you don't pull the trigger unless you actually want to launch a bullet downrange, and be conscious of what the backstop is. Then you're going to be a safe shooter. You know, it's kind of one of those deals. So that's the critical thing. When you know, I'm no professional trainer like Massad that's been doing this for 100 years. You know, been training back since they rode dinosaurs. But I've done a fair amount of training also, and I've done a fair amount of training with beginners. And I find the biggest thing you have to work through is their gun manipulation skills more than the shooting skills. And I'm sure you've seen this too. I mean, some of them, they don't exactly know how to handle, you know, handle the firearm properly. When you're manipulating the firearm, you have to keep control of the firearm. You know, you don't want to be gripping the gun down here. You don't want to be holding it in your offhand like this. You know, when you're going to handle a firearm, handle it like you want to have control over it. You know, have your firing grip on the gun even when you're not going to shoot it. You know, manipulation skills. You know, empty gun, empty magazine. You know, you want to go ahead and be able to seat the magazine, handle it in, work the controls on the gun, work whatever controls you want, and be in control of it. If you got a hold of it down here, then it's like, you know, what are you going to do there? And I see this on the range all the time, and Massad, I'm sure you see this. The new guy gets ready to reload. They get ready to reload the gun, and they put the gun in their other hand to try to reload the gun. You know, it's like, what in the world are you doing? You know, keep control of the firearm, and make it a habit to keep your finger off the trigger, because you're not shooting while you're manipulating the gun. You're not shooting the gun. So, what's your muzzle? What's your finger position? Keep control of the firearm. So now that we've addressed the safety side of it, the basics of shooting a handgun come down basically to three things that really matter. Number one, you got to be able to aim it. That's the easy one. You know, you got a rear sight and you got a front sight. You put the front sight in the notch of the rear sight. You put the top of the sight level with the top of the rear sight, and then you put the top of the front sight wherever you want the bullet to go. It's pretty darn simple. I mean, I've never had anybody in a beginner class that I couldn't explain that to, and they'd have that just in a couple of minutes. You know, that's the easy part to teach. Okay, the next two critical things are the firing grip. You got to grip the gun tight enough that you can just have control over the gun. So you got to grip it firm with your firing hand, and you got to grip it really tight with your support hand to keep control of the gun to minimize recoil. And the tighter you grip the gun, the more you can manhandle the trigger and still have a reasonably accurate shot. If you limp wrist the gun and you slap the trigger, bullet's way off. If you got the gun gripped really tight and you manipulate the trigger, the gun doesn't move nearly as much. So your bullet deflection isn't near as great. That comes down to the third most important thing, shooting a handgun, and the hardest one to learn, manipulating the trigger. Accurate shooting means not disturbing your sight picture that you can easily learn how to do, and pressing the trigger straight to the rear and not moving the sights when the gun goes off. So it really comes down to those three things. Two of them are simple, one of them's hard. It takes a long time for people to learn to reliably press the trigger to the rear and discharge the firearm without disturbing the alignment of the sights. So that's kind of my take on the safety and the basics of firing a handgun. What do you see in the training world?
Well, my recommendation from the training side as a firearms and deadly force instructor since 1972, think of the gun as a power tool. You wouldn't buy a new power tool without learning how to use it for your own safety and the safety of those around you. First, read. Do some research. Get some basic books on gun safety, gun handling, marksmanship, and when you can use the firearm. Certainly, don't be that you're a classic American they make jokes about. Read the owner's manual. Okay? One of the things you can look for, and there's a whole lot of good stuff on the internet, there's also some crap on the internet. One series I can recommend that was made expressly for first-time gun owners is a series called Guns 101, produced by the Polite Society podcast. They brought in a bunch of certified experts, each of them touching on different points, and you get literally free lecture and demonstration. You do want hands-on training. Check with the gun store that sold you the firearm and see who they recommend in the area to give you a good firearm safety and basic shooting class. That's two different things. The firearm safety is the safe manipulation. The shooting is the safe manipulation plus the skillful application of marksmanship. If you don't have a gun dealer nearby, or you bought the gun in a private sale, or it was a gift from Dad or something, reach out to the National Rifle Association in Washington, D.C. Leave the politics out of it. NRA for decades has been the undisputed leader, even by the opponents of gun ownership, in teaching firearm safety. And they have literally 6 figures worth of active certified firearms instructors in this country, some of whom will be local to you and affordable and easy to get to. A key element of the safety part is going to be safe storage. Even if you have a license to carry the gun, or you're in a state where you don't need a license to do so, it's not going to be on your physical person all the time. You have to understand you're totally responsible for keeping it secured from unauthorized hands. The crazy brother-in-law who visits the house every now and then unexpectedly, a child not yet at the age of responsibility, or the burglar we're all worried about gets into the house before you do and has his hands on the gun at about the time you walk in the door unarmed. Be looking at quick release gun safety. Quick release gun safe. They're about this big. They can be secured to the wall or to furniture, and it's very quick to hit the buttons by feel, pop it open, and get the gun out. And it's certainly safe to keep the gun loaded therein. Above all, safety. I don't know which one of you are ever going to need the gun for the exigent circumstance you bought it to prepare for. I do know once you have it, there's going to be a lethal weapon in your home. And if you're carrying it every single day, you'll be handling it, manipulating it, checking it, loading it, unloading it, securing it, in the presence of the people you most love, the people you bought that gun to protect. The price of gun ownership is constant vigilance. Power and responsibility are commensurate. Now, it's sad that our generation learned it from Spider-Man's uncle in a comic book. the statement that with great power comes great responsibility. Americans first heard that from Franklin Delano Roosevelt during World War II. But both of them had only half of the equation. The responsibility and the power have to be in a dead equal balance. A lethal weapon, obviously, it's literally the power of life and death. Competence and responsibility come with it. But at the same time, just as power demands responsibility, responsibility demands power. Power without responsibility inevitably becomes tyranny. But responsibility without the power to fulfill it is the very definition of futility. Welcome to the world of gun ownership. You're taking a responsible approach just by watching this. You're welcome. Join us, and I hope you'll advance. Stay safe, and remember, watch the Wilson Combat YouTube channel. It has a whole lot of that precious information that you can get for free. And don't forget to hit that notification button. See you next time.